The rain had been pouring down for 3 straight days in Portland. The kind of cold, heavy rain that soaks through everything and makes you wonder if the sun will ever come back. On the third evening, when most people were rushing home or ducking into warm restaurants, a young woman stood outside Giovanni's Italian restaurant, just staring through the foggy windows. Her name was Maya Chen, and she was 23 years old, though right now she looked much younger and much older at the same time. Her coat was so wet it clung to her thin frame like a second skin. She held a backpack close to her chest, protecting it from the rain like it contained something precious, which it did. Inside that backpack was everything she owned in the world. Maya had been standing there for almost 20 minutes, trying to build up the courage to go inside. She watched families laughing over plates of pasta, couples sharing wine, groups of friends celebrating birthdays. The warm glow from inside the restaurant made her eyes sting with something that wasn't just rainwater. But what really held her attention was the piano. A beautiful grand piano sat in the corner of the dining room, its polished black surface reflecting the soft restaurant lights. It looked like it hadn't been played in a while. There was something sad about that, Maya thought. A piano that beautiful shouldn't sit silent. Inside the restaurant, Giovanni Russo was doing what he did every evening, moving between tables, checking on his guests, making sure the bread was warm and the wine was flowing. At 60 years old, he'd been running this place for nearly 40 years. His mother had opened it when she first came to America from Italy, and when she passed away 6 months ago, the restaurant became his completely. That piano in the corner had been his mother's pride and joy. She used to play it every Friday night, filling the restaurant with music that made people forget their troubles. But since she died, Giovanni couldn't bring himself to play it, and he didn't want anyone else to either. It felt too personal, too raw. He was refilling water glasses when he noticed the girl outside. She'd been there for a while now, and something about the way she looked at his restaurant bothered him. Not in a bad way, exactly. It was more like she was looking at something she'd lost and was trying to remember how to find it again. The dinner rush was just starting. Tables were filling up fast. His servers were moving quickly, taking orders, delivering food, keeping everyone happy. Giovanni prided himself on running a tight ship. Everything had its place, its rhythm, its purpose. Then the door opened and the girl walked in. Water dripped from her clothes onto the black and white checkered floor. The conversations around the restaurant got quieter as people turned to look. Giovanni saw his hostess, young Isabella, freeze at her stand, unsure what to do. This clearly wasn't someone coming in to make a reservation. Maya stood just inside the door, suddenly feeling every eye in the room on her. Her face burned with embarrassment, but she'd come too far to turn back now. She'd been thinking about this for 3 days, rehearsing what she'd say, trying to find the right words that wouldn't make her sound completely desperate, even though she was. She walked straight to where Giovanni stood by the hostess stand. Up close, he could see she was shivering, and not just from the cold. Her eyes were dark with exhaustion and something else. Fear, maybe, or shame. He'd seen that look before on people who were trying very hard to hold themselves together. "Sir?" Maya started, and her voice came out shakier than she'd intended. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I know this is going to sound strange, and I understand if you say no. But I noticed you have a piano and I can play. Really play, I mean. If you'd let me perform during your dinner service, I'd only ask for a meal in return. Just food. Nothing else." The words tumbled out in a rush, and as soon as they were out, Maya wanted to take them back. It sounded ridiculous, even to her own ears. What restaurant owner would agree to something like this? She probably looked like she was trying to scam him somehow. Giovanni studied her face. He'd lived long enough to tell when someone was lying. And this girl wasn't lying. She was desperate, yes, but there was something else there too. When she mentioned the piano, her whole expression had changed. Her eyes had gone to it like a drowning person looking at a life raft. He should have said no. There were health codes to think about. Insurance issues. His regular customers might not appreciate a homeless girl playing his mother's piano. It could disrupt the careful atmosphere he'd spent decades creating. But Giovanni had also learned something from his mother, who'd believed that how you treated people when they had nothing said everything about who you really were. And there was something about this girl that reminded him of his mother. That same fierce pride mixed with desperate hope. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya. Maya Chen." "Okay, Maya Chen, I'm Giovanni, and this is my restaurant." He pointed toward the piano. "You see that piano? That belonged to my mother. She played it every Friday night for 30 years. Nobody's touched it since she passed. So before I let you play for my customers, I need to know you can actually do what you say you can do." Maya nodded quickly. "Of course. I understand." "One song," Giovanni said, holding up a finger. "You play one song right now and I'll decide. Fair?" "Fair," Maya whispered. The walk from the hostess stand to the piano felt like a mile. Maya was aware of everyone watching her. She heard whispered conversations, saw people nudging their companions and pointing. A couple at a nearby table actually laughed, like this was entertainment they hadn't expected. Her hands shook as she took off her wet coat and draped it over the piano bench to dry. Underneath, her clothes weren't much better. Everything she owned was second-hand, worn thin from too much use and not enough care. She looked like exactly what she was, someone who had nowhere to go and nothing left to lose. She sat down on the bench and for just a second, her hands hovered over the keys without touching them. It had been 3 months since she'd played a real piano. 3 months of walking past music stores and pressing her hands against the windows, watching other people play. 3 months of hearing music in her head with no way to let it out. Behind her, a server had paused with a tray of salads. In the kitchen, she could hear the clatter of pots and pans, but even that seemed to quiet down. The entire restaurant was waiting to see what would happen next, waiting to see if this rain-soaked girl could actually play, or if she was just another person trying to take advantage of someone's kindness. Giovanni stood by his hostess stand with his arms crossed, watching. He didn't know what to expect. Part of him thought this might be a mistake. Part of him hoped it wasn't. Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then she placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The first notes filled the restaurant like a wave, washing over the conversations, the clinking silverware, the soft background music that had been playing from the speakers. Maya's fingers moved across the keys with a confidence that seemed impossible, given how she'd looked moments before. She was playing Rachmaninoff, one of the most difficult pieces in classical piano repertoire, and she wasn't just playing it. She was making it breathe, making it speak, making it tell a story that everyone in that restaurant could feel even if they couldn't name it. Her body moved with the music, swaying slightly as her hands flew across the keys. The piece built slowly, adding layers of complexity, moments of quiet beauty followed by passages of thunderous power. Every note was perfect, but more than that, every note meant something. Giovanni felt the hair on his arm stand up. He'd heard professional pianists before. His mother had taken him to concerts when he was young. But this was different. This wasn't just technical skill. This was something else entirely. This was someone pouring their whole soul into the music, holding nothing back. Around the restaurant, forks had stopped moving. Conversations had died completely. One elderly woman at a corner table had tears running down her face. A young couple who'd been arguing when they came in sat holding hands, both of them staring at Maya like they'd forgotten what they'd been fighting about. The music built to its climax, Maya's hands moving so fast they seemed to blur. Then, with 3 final crashing chords, it was over. The silence that followed was absolute. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then the entire restaurant erupted in applause. People were standing up from their tables. The sound of clapping filled every corner of Giovanni's restaurant, bouncing off the walls and mixing with shouts of appreciation. Maya sat frozen at the piano, her hands still resting on the keys, unable to process what was happening. She'd expected polite applause at best. Maybe a nod from Giovanni, and then he'd tell her whether she could play for food or not. She hadn't expected this. People were actually standing for her. Giovanni just stood there with his mouth slightly open. In 40 years of running this restaurant, through hundreds of Friday nights when his mother had played beautiful music, he'd never seen a reaction like this. His mother had been wonderful, but this girl, this wet, shivering girl who'd walked in off the street, had just delivered something extraordinary. A man in an expensive gray suit was already making his way toward the piano, pulling a business card from his wallet. He looked like the kind of person who was used to getting what he wanted. "Excuse me," he said, practically pushing past a waiter to reach Maya. "I'm Richard Chen. I represent musical talent for concert halls and recording studios up and down the West Coast. Where have you been performing? I need to know why I haven't heard about you before now." Maya looked up at him, and for a second she couldn't even find words. I haven't been performing anywhere, she finally managed. Not for a long time. Richard looked confused, like her answer didn't make any sense. That's impossible. You play like someone who performs every night. Who's your current agent? Who are you signed with? Nobody. I'm not signed with anyone. Before Richard could ask another question, Giovanni appeared beside them. He put a protective hand on Maya's shoulder, and something about the gesture made her want to cry. It had been so long since anyone had stood up for her like that. First things first, Giovanni said firmly. The young lady is going to eat. Then if she wants to talk to you, she can talk to you. But right now, she's my guest, and my guests don't go hungry. He guided Maya toward a table in the corner, the one his family always used for special occasions. She could barely walk. Her legs felt shaky, and not just from hunger. The adrenaline of the performance was wearing off, leaving her feeling hollowed out and exposed. Giovanni snapped his fingers at one of his servers. Tony, bring out everything. The good bread, the soup, the chicken parmesan, the pasta, and tell Carlos to make it special. Sir, that's a lot of food, Tony said. I know what it is. Just bring it. Maya sank into the chair, and suddenly she couldn't hold it together anymore. Tears started running down her face, hot and fast. She tried to wipe them away quickly, embarrassed to be crying in front of all these people, but they just kept coming. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I don't usually fall apart like this. Giovanni sat down across from her and pushed a cloth napkin toward her. You don't need to apologize. When's the last time you ate? And I mean really ate, not just whatever you could find. Maya thought about it. 4 days ago. I had 2 hot dogs from a convenience store. Giovanni's face tightened, but he didn't say anything. He just nodded and waited while his staff started bringing out food. Warm bread with olive oil, a bowl of minestrone soup that smelled like heaven, a glass of red wine, even though Maya tried to protest that she didn't need it. Eat slowly, Giovanni advised. When you haven't eaten in a while, you need to take your time or you'll make yourself sick. Maya picked up a piece of bread, and the first bite tasted so good she almost cried again. She'd forgotten what real food tasted like. For months now, she'd been surviving on whatever was cheapest, dollar store crackers, day-old donuts from the bakery dumpster, sometimes nothing at all. Around them, the restaurant had gone back to its normal rhythm, though people kept glancing over at their table. Maya could hear them talking about the performance, about how incredible it had been. A few people even approached to tell her how much they'd enjoyed it before Giovanni politely but firmly sent them back to their tables. Let her eat, he kept saying. There's time to talk later. The chicken parmesan arrived, golden and covered in melted cheese. The pasta came in a big bowl, more than Maya could possibly eat in one sitting. She ate slowly like Giovanni had told her, but it was hard not to rush. Every bite reminded her of how hungry she'd been, how long she'd been denying herself this basic comfort. Giovanni watched her eat with the satisfied expression of someone who'd just solved a problem. His wife, Teresa, came out from the back office where she'd been doing paperwork. She took one look at Maya and immediately understood what was happening. Giovanni, she said softly, what have you gotten yourself into? I'll tell you later, he replied. Right now, just let the girl eat. Teresa nodded and went back to work, but not before shooting her husband a look that said they'd definitely be talking about this tonight. Richard, the talent agent, had taken a seat at the bar where he could keep an eye on Maya. He kept checking his phone and looking over, clearly impatient but trying not to be rude about it. A couple of other people who'd been in the restaurant during the performance were also waiting, though Giovanni had made it clear that nobody was going to bother Maya while she ate. It took her almost an hour to finish the meal. By the end, she felt more human than she had in months, full stomach, warm for the first time in days, and surrounded by the kind of comfortable noise that came from a busy restaurant. It was almost enough to make her forget that she didn't have anywhere to sleep tonight. Giovanni had been patient, letting her eat in peace. But now he leaned forward with his elbows on the table. Okay, he said. I need to understand something. You play like you've been training your whole life. Where did you learn to play like that? Maya set down her fork and took a sip of wine. The question was simple, but the answer was complicated. Where did she even start? I went to Juilliard, she said quietly. Giovanni's eyebrows went up. The Juilliard? In New York? Yeah, I got in when I was 16. Full scholarship. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Everyone said I was going to be the next great concert pianist. My teachers, my parents, everyone. They had my whole career planned out before I even graduated. So what happened? Maya was quiet for a long moment, staring at her empty plate. This was the part of the story she hated telling. The part where she had to admit how completely she'd failed everyone who'd believed in her. I fell apart, she said simply. Junior year, I was competing in this huge piano competition. Everyone was there. Judges from all the major orchestras, talent scouts, other musicians. It was supposed to be my big moment. The performance that would launch my career. She took another sip of wine, needing the courage to continue. I walked out on stage, sat down at the piano, and just froze. I couldn't remember the piece. Couldn't make my hands move. I'd practiced it 10,000 times, and suddenly it was just gone. I sat there for maybe 2 minutes while everyone waited. Then I got up and walked off stage. Giovanni didn't say anything. He just listened. After that, I couldn't play anymore. Every time I tried, I'd start shaking. Panic attacks, my therapist called them. I dropped out of Juilliard. My parents were devastated. They'd sacrificed everything for my music education. My dad worked 3 jobs to help pay for it, even with the scholarship. My mom took night shifts at a hospital. They believed I was going to make it all worth it. And they blamed you when it didn't work out? Giovanni asked gently. Maya nodded. They said I'd thrown away their sacrifice. That I was weak. That if I really loved music, I would have pushed through it. We had this huge fight and I left. That was 4 years ago. Haven't talked to them since. 4 years, Giovanni repeated. And you've been homeless this whole time? No, not the whole time. I got odd jobs. Taught piano to kids who didn't really want to learn. Played background music in hotel lobbies. Worked retail for a while. But every job felt like a reminder that I'd failed. 6 months ago, my roommate moved out and I couldn't afford rent on my own. Lost my apartment. I tried staying in shelters, but they're not always safe and there's never enough space. Been sleeping in my car mostly. Your car? Had a car, Maya corrected. It got towed 3 weeks ago. Couldn't afford to get it out of impound. So now I've just been moving around, trying to stay warm, trying to figure out what to do next. She looked up at Giovanni, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears again. I saw your restaurant a few days ago. Saw that piano through the window. I used to walk past here sometimes back when I had a place to stay and was working at the hotel downtown. I'd see people eating and laughing, and that piano would just be sitting there. And I'd think about how much I missed playing. Why didn't you come in before? Giovanni asked. Pride, I guess. Shame. Take your pick. She smiled sadly. It took me 3 days to work up the courage to walk through that door and ask you. I kept telling myself it was too pathetic, that you'd just laugh at me or call the police. But I was so hungry and I missed playing so much and I just thought maybe someone would give me a chance. Giovanni sat back in his chair and crossed his arms, thinking. His restaurant was busy tonight. Tables were full, people were happy, and everything was running smoothly. His life was comfortable and predictable. He'd worked hard for that comfort, that predictability. Taking on someone like Maya could complicate things. But then he thought about his mother, who'd always said that the universe puts people in your path for a reason. You could ignore them and go about your comfortable life, or you could pay attention and maybe change someone's world. I have a proposal for you, Giovanni finally said. You come play here 5 nights a week. Wednesday through Sunday during dinner service. 2 sets per night. In exchange, you get dinner every night you play. Plus, I'll pay you $200 a week. Maya's mouth fell open. What? No, I can't accept that. I just asked for food. I know what you asked for. I'm offering more because that's what you're worth. What you did tonight, that wasn't worth just a plate of pasta. That was worth a lot more than what I'm offering, honestly. But it's what I can afford right now. But I don't need money. I just need... You need money, Giovanni interrupted firmly. You need to get back on your feet. You need stability, and my restaurant needs music again. That piano's been silent for 6 months, and hearing you play tonight reminded me why my mother loved it so much. You'd be doing me a favor. Maya didn't know what to say. $200 a week wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to maybe rent a room somewhere. Get some clean clothes. Start rebuilding. 3 weeks had passed since that rainy night when Maya first walked into Giovanni's restaurant. 3 weeks that felt like a lifetime and also like no time at all. She was playing almost every night now, and something had shifted inside her. The panic attacks that had plagued her for years hadn't completely disappeared, but they were quieter now, manageable. When she sat down at the piano each evening, her hands still shook a little, but then the music would start and everything else would fade away. Giovanni had done more than just offer her a job. He'd introduced her to his nephew, who owned a small apartment building across town. The nephew had a studio available, nothing fancy, but it had 4 walls, a bathroom, and most importantly, it was hers. Giovanni had covered the first month's rent as an advance, telling Maya she could pay him back slowly. "You can't play your best if you're worried about where you'll sleep," he'd said, brushing off her tearful thanks like it was nothing. The studio was tiny, just one room with a kitchenette in the corner, and a bathroom so small you could barely turn around in it. But to Maya, it felt like a mansion. She had a bed, her first real bed in months. She'd bought sheets from a thrift store and a blanket that actually kept her warm. She had a door she could lock. She had a place that was hers. Now, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, Maya sat at the restaurant's piano practicing before the evening service. Giovanni was in the kitchen going over inventory with his head chef. The lunch crowd had cleared out, and the restaurant was peaceful in that special way restaurants are when they're empty, like they're taking a breath before the next rush. She was working through Chopin when Giovanni came out of the kitchen carrying 2 small cups of espresso. He set one down on a napkin near the piano and took the other to his favorite chair by the window. "You're getting better," he called over. Maya stopped playing and smiled. "I was already good." "Okay, you're getting more confident then." Less scared of the keys, that was true. She was starting to feel like herself again when she played. Or maybe she was becoming someone new, someone who'd fallen and gotten back up, someone stronger. Giovanni took a sip of his espresso and studied her. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. What happened that day?" "At the competition. I've been thinking about it, and it doesn't make sense to me. You obviously know how to play. You've probably got every piece you've ever learned memorized in your head. So what really made you freeze?" Maya left the piano and walked over to get her espresso. She sat down across from Giovanni, cradling the small cup in both hands. This was a question she'd been asking herself for 4 years. "I've thought about it a lot," she said slowly. "I've talked about it with therapists and turned it over in my head about 1,000,000 times. I think it was the weight of everything, you know? Everyone had sacrificed so much for me to be there. My parents had worked themselves to exhaustion. My teachers had invested hours and hours into my training. Everyone believed I was going to be this great success story." She paused, organizing her thoughts. "And I wanted to be that for them. I really did. But somewhere along the way, the music stopped being about joy or expression or even just playing. It became about not letting people down. Every note had to be perfect because if it wasn't, I was failing everyone who'd believed in me." "That's a heavy burden for a 19-year-old, Giovanni observed. It was a heavy burden for anyone. I started having nightmares about playing wrong notes. I'd practice until my hands hurt, and then I'd practice more because I was scared it still wasn't enough. I stopped eating properly because I'd get so focused on practicing, stopped seeing friends because I didn't have time. Music became this thing I was terrified of instead of something I loved." Giovanni nodded, listening carefully. "So that day when I walked out on that stage and saw all those people watching me, expecting me to be brilliant, I just couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't about forgetting the piece. I could have played it in my sleep. It was about my brain just shutting down and saying no more. I can't carry this weight anymore. And my hand stopped working because my whole body was screaming for me to stop." "But you kept playing after that," Giovanni pointed out. "You said you worked other music jobs." "Yeah, but that was different. Teaching kids or playing background music in hotels, nobody really cares if you miss a note. Nobody's watching that closely. Nobody's invested in whether you succeed or fail. It was safe, but it also felt like dying a little bit every day, because I knew I was capable of more and I was too scared to try." She looked down at her espresso cup. "My parents couldn't understand that. To them it looked like I'd just given up, like I'd decided their sacrifice wasn't worth the effort. We had this terrible fight before I left Seattle. My father said I was ungrateful. My mother said I was breaking her heart. And maybe they were right. Maybe I was just too weak to handle the pressure. Or maybe," Giovanni said gently, "you were smart enough to know when something was destroying you, and brave enough to walk away from it." Maya looked up at him, surprised. "Think about it," Giovanni continued. "You were 19 years old and you made a choice that you knew would cost you everything. Your education, your family, your whole planned future. That's not weakness. That's courage. Weakness would have been pushing through until you had a complete breakdown or worse." "I did have a breakdown," Maya pointed out. "You had one moment on stage where your body said enough. That's not the same thing as a breakdown." A breakdown is what would have happened if you'd kept going the way you were going. You stopped yourself before you got to that point. Maya had never thought about it that way. For 4 years, she'd been carrying around this story that she was a failure, that she'd been given this incredible gift and incredible opportunities, and she'd thrown them away because she couldn't handle the pressure. That's certainly what her parents believed. What her teachers at Juilliard probably believed. What she'd believed about herself. But sitting here in this quiet restaurant, listening to Giovanni reframe her story, she felt something shift. Maybe she hadn't failed. Maybe she'd just been trying to survive. The thing is, Maya said quietly, I never stopped loving music. Even when I was at my lowest, sleeping in my car, wondering where my next meal would come from, I'd hear a piece in my head, and my fingers would move like they were playing it. The music never left me. I just couldn't figure out how to get back to it without all that pressure and fear. And now, Giovanni asked. Maya thought about the past 3 weeks. Playing every night for the dinner crowd at Giovanni's. The way people would stop their conversations to listen. The applause after each set. The occasional person who'd come up after to tell her how much they'd enjoyed it. Now it feels different, she admitted. When I play here, it's not about being perfect or living up to anyone's expectations. It's just about the music. And the people seem to like it, which is nice, but even if they didn't, I think I'd still want to play. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Giovanni said. He finished his espresso and stood up. Come on, I want to show you something. He led her into the small office behind the kitchen. The walls were covered with photos and framed articles from over the years. Giovanni's mother's arrival in America, the restaurant's opening day, various celebrations and events. He pointed to one particular photo, yellowed with age. It showed a young woman sitting at the piano in the restaurant. She was laughing at something, her hands frozen mid-motion over the keys. The joy on her face was unmistakable. My mother, Giovanni explained. That was taken about 30 years ago. She'd come to America with nothing. Didn't speak English. Didn't have any money. Didn't know anyone. But she had this dream of opening a restaurant where people could feel at home, and she wanted music to be part of it. He touched the photo gently. She wasn't a professional pianist. Never trained at any fancy school. She just played because she loved it. Every Friday night, without fail, she'd play for 2 hours. Sometimes people would request songs she didn't know, and she'd apologize and play something else. Sometimes she'd hit wrong notes and laugh about it, but people loved her playing because you could feel how much she loved doing it. Maya studied the photo. The woman in it looked so happy, so free. After she died, Giovanni continued, I couldn't stand the thought of anyone else playing that piano. It felt wrong, like replacing her. So I let it sit there silent. But when you played that first night, I realized something. My mother wouldn't have wanted that piano to be silent. She would have wanted it to keep bringing joy to people, whoever was playing it. He turned to Maya. What I'm trying to say is that you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to live up to some impossible standard. You just need to play because you love it, and let that love come through in the music. That's what my mother did. That's what you're doing now. And it's enough. More than enough. Maya felt tears prickling her eyes again. She'd cried more in the past 3 weeks than she had in the previous 4 years. But these were different tears. Not tears of shame or desperation, but tears of relief, of healing. I never thanked you properly, she said, for that first night. For believing me when I walked in looking like a mess and asking to play for food. Most people would have just told me to leave. Giovanni shrugged. My mother taught me to pay attention when the universe puts someone in your path. You walked in asking for a chance, and I had a piano sitting silent. Seemed like the universe was being pretty clear about what I should do. They stood there for a moment in comfortable silence, surrounded by decades of restaurant history captured in photos and articles. Then Giovanni's phone buzzed. He checked it and frowned. Looks like we've got a full house tonight. Every table's booked. Word's getting around about your playing. We might need to think about adding a third set on busy nights. Maya's stomach tightened a little at the thought of more people watching her play, but it was a different kind of nervousness now. Not the paralyzing fear that had gripped her at Juilliard, but more like excited anticipation. Like standing at the top of a hill and preparing to run down it. I can do 3 sets, she said. You sure? I don't want to push you too hard, I'm sure. Besides, I need to build up my stamina if I'm going to make a real comeback. A comeback? Giovanni raised an eyebrow. Are you thinking about performing again? Like professionally? Maya hesitated. She hadn't let herself think that far ahead. The studio apartment, the regular meals, the nightly performances at the restaurant, all of that felt like more than she deserved already. The idea of reaching for more felt dangerous, like she might jinx everything she'd gotten back. But then she thought about how she felt when she played now. The joy that was starting to creep back in, the way her hands moved across the keys with growing confidence, the connection she felt with the audience when she saw them really listening. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe I'm not ready yet. But for the first time in 4 years, I can imagine a future where I might be ready, where I might want to try again. Giovanni smiled. Well, whenever you're ready, you let me know. I might know some people who know some people. You have connections in the classical music world? Maya asked, surprised. It started with a young couple on a date. They'd been sitting at one of the corner tables at Giovanni's, having what looked like their first dinner together based on the nervous way they kept glancing at each other. The girl had pulled out her phone during Maya's second set of the evening, angling it to capture the performance. Maya had noticed but didn't mind. People took photos and videos at the restaurant sometimes. It was usually for their own memories, nothing more. She finished the piece, took her small bow during the applause, and moved on to the next song. The couple left after dinner, holding hands and smiling. Maya didn't think anything more about it. That was Thursday night. By Saturday morning, everything had changed. Maya woke up in her studio apartment to her phone buzzing nonstop. She'd kept the same phone number through everything, even when she was homeless, using free Wi-Fi wherever she could find it to stay connected to what little remained of her old life. Most days it just sat silent in her backpack, but now it was lighting up like crazy. Text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Notifications from social media apps she barely used anymore. Voicemails piling up. Confused and still half asleep, she opened her messages. The first one was from a former classmate at Juilliard. Maya? Is this really you? You're playing at a restaurant in Portland. What happened? Then another from someone she'd taught piano 2 years ago. OMG, I just saw your video. You sound amazing! Why didn't you tell anyone you were performing again? Video? What video? Maya opened one of the social media apps and immediately saw what everyone was talking about. That young couple from Thursday night had posted their recording. The caption read, "This homeless pianist is playing at a random Italian restaurant and she's incredible." The video had 2 million views. Maya's hands started shaking. She watched the video, seeing herself from the audience's perspective. She looked thin in the recording, and you could see how her clothes didn't quite fit right, how worn they were, but you could also see the way her face transformed when she played, how her whole body moved with the music. The comments section was overwhelming. Thousands and thousands of comments. Who is this woman? Someone needs to find her and give her a record deal. This is better than half the professional pianists I've paid to see in concert. The fact that she's homeless and still playing this beautifully is heartbreaking and inspiring at the same time. I looked up the restaurant. It's Giovanni's in Portland. I'm booking a flight this weekend just to hear her play in person. Maya set her phone down, her heart racing. This felt too big, too fast. She'd just gotten her life to a place where she could breathe again. Now suddenly strangers on the internet were talking about her, making assumptions about her story, deciding who she was and what she represented. Her phone rang. It was Giovanni. Have you seen it? He asked as soon as she answered. I'm looking at it now. Giovanni, I don't know what to do. There's so many people talking about me and they don't even know me. I know. Listen, it gets more complicated. I've had about 50 phone calls this morning. News stations want to interview you. Record labels are asking for your contact information. And I've got people trying to make reservations for the next 3 months. We're completely booked through New Year's. Maya felt dizzy. This is too much. It's too fast, I agree. That's why I need you to come down to the restaurant right away. We need to figure out how to handle this before it gets even more out of control. When Maya arrived at Giovanni's an hour later, there were actually people standing outside the restaurant taking pictures. A news van was parked across the street. She tried to slip in through the back door, but a reporter spotted her. Maya Chen? Maya, can we ask you a few questions? No, sorry, I can't. I'm sorry, Maya stammered, hurrying inside. Giovanni was waiting in the kitchen with his wife Teresa, their daughter Isabella, and a woman Maya didn't recognize. The woman was in her 50s, dressed in a sharp business suit with the kind of presence that made you pay attention. Maya, Giovanni said. This is Linda Park. She's a public relations specialist. She works with musicians and performers, helps them manage their public image. I called her this morning because I think we need professional help with this situation. Linda stood and shook Maya's hand firmly. It's good to meet you, Maya. I've watched your video about 20 times now. You're extraordinarily talented. Thank you, Maya said automatically, then immediately felt stupid. Her whole life was turning upside down and she was making small talk. Let's sit down, Linda suggested, gesturing to the chairs Giovanni had arranged around one of the tables. I want to talk about what's happening and what your options are. They all sat. Maya's hands were shaking again, so she folded them in her lap where no one could see. Linda pulled out a tablet and opened a document. Okay, so here's where things stand. The video of your performance has now reached 12 million views and is still climbing. It's been picked up by several major news outlets. You're trending on multiple social media platforms. And most importantly, you've caught the attention of some very significant people in the music industry. She swiped through the tablet. I've received inquiries from 3 major record labels, 2 concert halls including one in Seattle, multiple talk shows that want you as a guest, and about a dozen magazines that want to do feature stories. Oh, and someone from Juilliard called. The dean of the music department wants to speak with you. Maya felt like she was going to be sick. The dean? Why would he want to talk to me? I dropped out. Because you're news right now, Linda explained gently. And because, despite how things ended, you're still one of their most talented former students. They want to be part of your comeback story. I don't have a comeback story, Maya protested. I'm just playing piano at a restaurant because a nice man gave me a chance when I was desperate. That is your comeback story, Linda said. And it's a powerful one. But here's what you need to understand. This story is going to be told whether you participate in telling it or not. Right now, strangers on the internet are creating a narrative about who you are based on a 2-minute video. You can either let them define you, or you can take control of your own story. Teresa, who'd been quiet until now, leaned forward. What do you want, Maya? Forget about what everyone else wants or expects. What do you actually want? That was the question, wasn't it? A week ago, Maya would have said she just wanted stability, a roof over her head, regular meals, the chance to play piano without the crushing weight of expectation. She'd achieved all of that. She'd been happy or at least content, but now, I want to play, Maya said slowly, working through her thoughts. I want to perform real concerts again. I want to do it right this time on my terms without letting the pressure destroy me, but I'm scared. What if I freeze up again? What if this is all just hype, and I can't actually deliver what people expect? Those are valid fears, Linda acknowledged. But let me tell you what I see. I see someone who's already survived the worst thing that could happen to her career. You fell from the top, lost everything, and somehow found your way back to the music. That's not weakness. That's resilience. And that's what people are responding to in that video. It's not just your technical skill. It's the emotion, the authenticity. You play like someone who's earned every note. Giovanni spoke up. Nobody's saying you have to make any big decisions right now. But Linda's right about one thing. This attention isn't going to go away just because you ignore it. You need to decide how you want to engage with it. Maya looked around the table at these people who'd become like family in just a few weeks. Giovanni, who'd given her a chance when she had nothing. Teresa, who'd quietly made sure Maya had everything she needed at the apartment. Isabella, who'd started joining Maya during practice sessions, fascinated by the music. And now Linda, who seemed genuinely interested in helping rather than exploiting. What would engaging with it look like? Maya asked. Linda seemed pleased by the question. We start small and build up. First, we do one carefully planned interview with a reputable outlet. We control the narrative, tell your story the way you want it told. Then we consider some select performance opportunities. Nothing too high pressure at first. Maybe a small concert hall, invite-only audience. Build your confidence back up gradually. And if I have a panic attack? If I freeze again? Then we deal with it, Linda said simply. We're honest about it. Mental health struggles are part of your story, and there's no shame in that. But Maya, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've worked with performers coming back from all kinds of setbacks. I know the signs of someone who's not ready, and I know the signs of someone who is. You're ready. You just don't believe it yet. Maya wanted to believe her. She wanted to think that maybe, just maybe, she could have a second chance at the career she'd walked away from. But the fear was still there, cold and heavy in her chest. Can I think about it? She asked. Just for a day or two? Of course, Linda said. But while you're thinking, let me tell you one more thing. This morning I got a call from Victor Rodriguez. Do you know who that is? Maya's eyes widened. He's the music director for the Seattle Symphony. He's one of the most respected conductors in the country. That's right, and he wants to meet with you. He saw your video and he remembers you from your Juilliard days. He said, and I quote, "That young woman has a gift and I'd like to help her share it with the world." He's offering you a chance to perform as a guest soloist with the symphony. One concert, your choice of piece, full orchestra backing you up. Maya couldn't breathe. The Seattle Symphony. Playing with a full orchestra. It was the kind of opportunity that could launch or relaunch a career. It was also terrifying. I can't, she whispered. That's too big. That's too much pressure. You don't have to decide right now, Linda reminded her. Just know that the offer is there. Think about it. Think about what you want your future to look like. The meeting wrapped up shortly after. Linda left her contact information and promised to call back in a few days. The news van outside had finally left. Maya sat alone in the restaurant with Giovanni while Teresa and Isabella went to open up for lunch service. I feel like I'm in a dream, Maya said. A really weird, overwhelming dream. It's a lot to process, Giovanni agreed. But Maya, I want you to know something. However you decide to handle this, whatever choices you make, you're still welcome here. This is still your home base. You can still play here every night if you want to, or you can pursue bigger things. Either way, we support you. Maya felt tears welling up again. Why are you so nice to me? You barely knew me when you gave me this chance. Giovanni smiled. You remind me of my mother. She believed that when you help someone find their way back to themselves, you're doing sacred work. I think that's what happened here. You found your way back to who you really are. Now you just have to decide what to do with that. That night, Maya played her regular sets at the restaurant. The dining room was packed, every table full of people who'd made reservations weeks ago and others who'd heard about the viral video and were hoping for walk-in seating. Some had driven hours just to be there. Maya was nervous at first, aware that people were recording her, that her every move was being scrutinized. But then she started playing, and the familiar peace settled over her. The music pushed everything else away. Between sets, people approached her. Some wanted autographs, which felt surreal. Others wanted to share their own stories of struggle and comeback. A middle-aged woman told Maya that watching the video had inspired her to pick up piano again after 20 years. A young man said he'd been thinking about giving up on his music dreams. But Maya's story had changed his mind. These connections with strangers who'd been touched by her music, that's what started to shift something in Maya's thinking. Her playing wasn't just about her anymore. It wasn't just about proving herself or living up to expectations or avoiding failure. It was about touching people's lives, even in small ways, making them feel something they might not feel otherwise. Maya stood in her tiny studio apartment staring at her phone. The screen showed a simple text message from an unknown number, but she knew exactly who it was from. She'd been staring at it for 10 minutes, unable to decide what to do. The message read, Maya, this is your mother. We saw the video. We saw you playing. We didn't know you were in Portland. We didn't know things were so hard. Please call us. We love you. We're so sorry. 4 years. 4 years of silence, of hurt feelings, of words that couldn't be taken back. And now this message appearing in her life just when everything else was turning upside down. Maya set the phone down and walked to the window. It was late November now, almost 2 months since that first rainy night at Giovanni's. The video had happened 3 weeks ago, and life had been a whirlwind since then. She'd done the interview with Linda's help, a carefully crafted conversation with a respected music journalist who'd treated her story with sensitivity. That interview had led to more attention, more offers, more pressure. But she'd also been practicing. Really practicing the way she used to. Not just playing for the dinner crowd, but working on challenging pieces in the quiet morning hours before the restaurant opened. Giovanni had given her a key so she could come in early and use the piano. She was getting stronger, more confident, starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could do this. But the decision about Seattle kept weighing on her. Victor Rodriguez's offer was still open. A concert with the symphony. It would be in 4 months, plenty of time to prepare. Linda thought she should do it. Giovanni thought she should do it. Even Teresa had said it seemed like the right next step. But Maya kept thinking about that competition at Juilliard. The way she'd frozen. The way everything had fallen apart. What if it happened again? But this time in front of an even bigger audience with even more at stake. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the same number. This time it was shorter. We're in Portland. We came to see you. We're staying at the hotel on 5th Street. If you're willing to talk, we'll wait. However long it takes. Maya's breath caught. They were here, in the same city. After 4 years of nothing, they'd driven or flown from Seattle to find her. She picked up her phone and called the only person she could think to talk to. Giovanni? It's Maya. My parents are here. They want to see me and I don't know what to do. 20 minutes later, she was sitting in the restaurant with Giovanni and Teresa. It was mid-afternoon, between lunch and dinner service, and the place was empty except for them. What do you want to do? Teresa asked gently. She was pouring tea for all of them, her movements calm and practiced. I don't know, Maya admitted. Part of me wants to see them so badly it hurts. But another part is still so angry about how things ended. They said terrible things. I said terrible things. How do you come back from that? Giovanni sipped his tea thoughtfully. My father and I didn't speak for 5 years. Stupid argument about the restaurant, about whether I should sell it and do something else with my life. 5 years we wasted being stubborn. Then my mother got sick and suddenly all that stubbornness seemed pointless. We made up before she died, but I'll always regret those 5 lost years. But what if I see them and nothing's changed? Maya asked. What if they still think I'm a disappointment? What if they want me to be someone I'm not? Teresa reached across the table and took Maya's hand. Honey, you can't control what they think or what they want. You can only control how you respond. But I'll tell you what I see. I see parents who loved you enough to sacrifice everything for your dreams. They made mistakes, yes. They put too much pressure on you. They didn't understand what you were going through, but they also just saw their daughter on the internet, looking thin and struggling, and they got in a car and drove to find you. That tells me they care, even if they don't always know how to show it. Maya knew Teresa was right. She also knew that if she didn't face this now, she'd regret it. Some conversations had to happen even when they were hard. Okay, she said. I'll meet with them. But not at their hotel. That feels too much like their territory. Can I bring them here?